The job market sucks right now.
Whether you're an entry-level worker with your opportunities getting decimated by AI,
or you're later stage in your career and you're fighting against 1,000 other applicants.
it's a tough world out there.
But what's a girl to do?
That's right. So on today's episode of Per My Last Email, we help you navigate this job market. Let's get into it. So we're going to get into job searching in a minute, but first, Kayla, what's your dream job?
Well, outside of running a small artisanal bakery in my neighborhood, I actually have my dream job. I love working at Morning Brew.
Okay, well, maybe you're living the dream, bread loaves aside, but that's not the case for everyone. What if you're feeling stuck in your current role, unsure how to pivot into something new, or you're worried you don't have the right experience?
That's where Udemy comes in. With Udemy Career Accelerators, you can fast track into high-demand fields like data science or game development. They help you build job-ready skills quickly so you can take the next step in your career.
Whether you're switching fields or leveling up where you are, Udemy makes learning practical, personalized, and built around your goals.
Check out udemy.com/personal-plan. That's udemy.com/personal-plan and use code PMLE14 for a free 14-day trial of Personal Plan, their annual learning subscription, on us at checkout. That's udemy.com/personal-plan and code PMLE14 for your free trial.
All right, Kayla, let's talk about this job market. And I think Sam Altman might be personally holding back every recent college graduate from getting a job. At least that is what a new paper out of Stanford, the Stanford Digital Economy Lab, is saying. People have probably heard of this, that AI can be very disruptive to the job market. But this paper actually explores who it's affecting the most. And what they found is it's entry-level workers. So some stats for you. Entry-level workers in AI-exposed jobs saw a 13% relative drop in employment for ages 22 through 25. This is compared to people that are not in AI-exposed occupations. 13% drop in employment. Older workers, so is AI affecting older workers? They actually saw 6 to 9% growth in AI-exposed roles, making it seem like entry-level jobs are maybe more automatable, and that's where AI is affecting the most. If AI augments your job, you're not seeing displacement, at least from an employment perspective. The other thing that was really interesting that this paper found is that wages have not gone down because of this, that wage is actually sticky. So if you're one of the few college graduates to actually end up with a job, you're still getting paid the same you would if AI didn't exist, theoretically. And then the last finding that I thought was interesting, this is not just affecting tech jobs. It's not just affecting remote workers. This is affecting pretty much every industry that's exposed to the internet at this point, which, breaking news is pretty much all of them. And they found that this trend started back in 2022, which is the year ChatGPT was released. So has AI just screwed every young person in America?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Basically.
Sorry, young kids.
I mean, it's hard because, of course, you have to think about it from an employer perspective as well, just to see where they're coming from. Yeah, it makes a lot more sense to pay the $20 a month for a ChatGPT subscription and have your more senior employees doing the work that an entry-level employee would do.
That's right.
But also, I think it's a little short-sighted of employers because we age. I don't know if we knew about this, but time passes.
Breaking news here on the podcast.
And so it's the entry-level people are going to become the mid-level people and the later stage people. And so if you're kind of locking them out of early career learnings, which is not just how to insert number into cell, but it's how to interact with individuals, how to be a good employee.
Right, how to connect the dots across the company.
Right, exactly. How to understand what's going on, how to manage, how to experience good managers. They're not going to be in those positions themselves.
Yeah, it's a hard spot to be in as an employer because the short-term incentive it's so sweet.
Yeah.
Like, wait, I don't need to pay John from Vanderbilt. I can pay ChatGPT $20 a month for basically an in-house analyst. But you're right. Like, where does your talent development and talent pipeline go if you're not actually hiring people that are going to grow with the company and then take those mid-level roles, which, as we've seen, are not being as affected by AI. So it might be penny wise, pound foolish here by employers when it comes to AI.
Right. But regardless, this is what's happening.
Correct.
And so as an entry-level person, we're going to get into the details in a second, but as an entry-level, you just graduated college, it's going to be kind of a shitstorm out there to try and get a job that is like valuable for your career.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway for me from this report is that if your job can be fully automated, that's pretty scary. But if it can be augmented, it's interesting. They're actually seeing growth in that area, which is like kind of the trope of like AI won't take your job. Someone with AI, well, maybe AI will take your job here, but if you can learn to use AI, you become even more valuable, it seems, in the workplace, and you really secure employment. It's just tough to get to that first job in order to prove you can do that. So it's tough out here for the kids.
Yeah, I agree. And I think realistically, if we're going to play this out for a few years, what's going to happen is that those entry-level jobs that do disappear in those industries, let's say tech, remote work, all of those highly connected to the internet roles, individuals need jobs, right? So they're going to find other industries where they can get jobs. And then those industries that eschewed the, or I don't know how to say that word actually.
Yeah, it sounded right to me.
That's right. I don't know. That said, they don't need these entry-level people. They're going to be struggling to hire mid-level career, individuals. So I wonder what it's going to look like in a few years. Is it just going to be that, as a country, we're employing more heavily in other non-tech related industries? Or is there just going to be like a huge recession?
A missing generation that never was employed. Well, it's interesting because I think we're starting to see this hypothesis that you've posited play out, which is if you can't get a job you normally would with a college degree, which is high paying, maybe working in finance or tech, you're going to go to something that probably doesn't require a college degree that is quote unquote maybe a little easier to get. And we're hearing rumors that a college degree is becoming less valuable. We've also heard rumors of the he-cession, which I know is your favorite term, so I'm excited to get into this. But they're showing that like the added value of a college degree, at least for men, is starting to disappear. There's no premium. You're not getting a benefit from an employment perspective, from a compensation perspective, as much as you were in the past, at least if you are male, from having a college degree. So I think you're spot on. Like they're finding employment in other places, but it's not ones that maybe they expected to be getting after receiving a college degree.
Yeah. So my problem with the he-cession is the label, not necessarily, I mean, obviously, like, darn, I wish that wasn't happening. But like, I'm not like pro he-cession. But I do think it is so there was an article, there's been a few articles about this phenomenon right now. And there was an article from Business Insider that showed this graph that I thought was really insightful, which is showing the relationship between unemployment, gender, and college or level of education. And as of right now, the disparity between women unemployment rate and men unemployment rate when they have a bachelor's degree and they're young, within, I think it's like under 30.
Okay.
There's quite a big difference there. And that does at first glance look pretty concerning. However, what I think is more interesting and what you've kind of already articulated is that it's also for men that are under 30 greater and have a college degree, greater than the same demographic that does not have a college degree.
Yeah.
So the discrepancy between men and women is worth noting. But I think what's very interesting is that it's actually you have a higher unemployment rate if you have a college degree versus if you do not. You only have a high school degree or an associate's degree.
Right, which is like a startling fact.
And one that I think is kind of a reversal of what we've normally thought about when we're thinking about, how to get a job. It's continue to increase your education.
Yeah.
So that is another thing that is very challenging and I perceive will continue to be a problem moving forward.
Yeah, the other element that came out of this quote unquote he-cession narrative is that men tend to be employed in fields that are maybe a little more cyclical or less resilient, construction, manufacturing, obviously tariffs, supply chain shocks, all of that, maybe causing a spike in unemployment for that particular sector, which affects men because they work in that sector, not because they're men. Women tend to work on average more in healthcare and education. Those tend to be more resilient or growing sectors of the economy. So there's also that bifurcation as well, where like your industry matters.
Yeah. And also if you're looking at that specific group that has that college education, I'd say tech, remote work, more like male dominated industries are experiencing more heavily that AI impact than you're seeing in perhaps healthcare or education, where we're not, doctors and nurses are not necessarily being replaced by AI at this moment.
Yet. I don't know about you, but I had something weird on my foot, didn't go to the doctor. Just ask ChatGPT.
And they said it was fine. You don't need to go to the ER.
Yeah, it's gotten much worse. Yeah, I'm a little terrified.
Great.
So, all right, I think in both of these, we're seeing that maybe young people have it really hard. College degree isn't as worth it as much in the past. AI might be taking a lot of opportunities away. Anecdotally, even from friends that aren't entry-level workers that I have, maybe they're finding a job, but it's taking a lot longer than they thought it would. It's requiring so much more effort to get a job. I had a friend that was doing case studies for like 5 or 6 different companies when he was interviewing. At some point, it's a full-time job to find a job.
Yeah.
He also had a job, so it wasn't sustainable. Yeah. Is that what you're seeing as well?
There. It's hell out there. It's not just entry level. I think there's a variety of things that are going on. First, it's that shift towards using AI instead of hiring. I also think that there's been a lot of concerns about adding additional investments in your company with this like kind of economic environmental uncertainty. And so companies are less quick to add. They're also potentially not rehiring when there's attrition. So when somebody leaves, they're saying, is there a way for us to absorb these tasks?
Yep.
I think also there was a lot of maybe overhiring at the beginning of COVID with remote work. It felt like we were kind of in a boom maybe for certain industries. And so now we're pulling back a little bit as a society. But at any level, it is hell out there getting a job. I think, especially if you've been impacted by the layoffs of the last few years, it is very, very challenging. And I have anecdotally have friends who have been looking aggressively, are extremely well qualified, extremely well credentialed, perfect fits for jobs, and then will be interviewing for months, if not years, to find any job.
Yeah.
Especially like basically like we'll take any position, and there's positions saying they're overqualified. There's also positions saying, oh, sorry, we actually decided we don't want this job anymore. Right. And so I think there's, for example, 2 years ago when we were working at Morning Brew Learning, I put out a position to hire somebody new. It was like, so it required 2 to 3 years of experience. It was a little bit more entry level. And within 48 hours, we got 1,000 applications.
Right.
Granted, it's Morning Brew. People love Morning Brew. People want to work at Morning Brew. That being said, that was 2 years ago. And I don't think that people were really using AI as much as they are now. I can imagine that it would be very challenging to stand out amid thousands of people that are applying for an individual job. And on the employer side, how are you going to weed out from 1,000 people? You can't interview half of them.
Yeah.
Right. And if this is your full-time job, you're a recruiter, that's your job to go through. If you're doing your full-time job and you're the hiring manager, you're looking for 6 people to bring through the interview process, you're not spending 3 minutes on each application, right? You need to basically either use AI to do the weeding out, or you need to like glaze over you need to spend 2 seconds on an application.
Yeah.
So it's really challenging, and standing out is hard. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, it's just AI looking at other AI applications, which is sad. I think that's the downside, where even if you're putting in a ton of effort in good faith to apply to a certain role, it's going to the same, quote unquote, inbox of the company. Yep. And if you're getting AI spammed applications, you're right. Okay, there's 5,000 applications. You literally could not look at all of them, give them the attention they deserve. Right. So you're going to look for other signals, or you're going to look at the ones that someone bumped or there's a warm intro. And so applying cold, even if you're doing it right, has gotten so much harder because there's so much more noise that you kind of get swept into that bucket. So I totally agree. That's what I'm hearing from friends as well. We're fortunate, like we are employed, and it feels very fortunate right now to be in that situation. What strategies, what tactics would you be deploying to navigate these kind of murky waters of the job market right now?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 stages, right? There's getting your foot in the door, and then there's going through the interview process and getting the job. The first, it's like we just talked about it. It's hell out there. You need to stand out. How do you do that? It's through networking. It's through getting those warm intros. It's through, knowing somebody that can vouch for you internally.
And I just want to underscore that now. I think AI has only made networking and a warm intro that much more important. Like you can't skate by, oh, I'm going to apply cold, but they're only going to get 50 applications and a human's going to review them. Like a human's only going to review them likely if you can find a way to tap that human to be like, hey, check out my application, because then they know it's actually human. Like the premium on networking has probably gone up 10x since 2020.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show. I completely agree. And I think another thing that you could do is use AI to get into fighting fire with fire in this situation.
More AI.
Yeah. Let's go. I think like if they're using that and you're spending an hour filling out the application and you know it's cold, like work with technology. And again, this is maybe the only time that I'll ever advocate for this. Work with technology to personalize, right? To make sure that it's specific. Your resume is mimicking, without lying, obviously, but is pulling out elements of your experience that mimic the roles and responsibilities of the job. Obviously, that's always been the advice, but now it's like, okay, can you do that kind of at scale?
Yeah.
But again, you need somebody to vouch for you internally. So the second thing is the next stage is once you actually do get that first round interview, it's still hell out there. Yeah. Like it's not easy. It's basically like, okay, now we have, 6, 10, 15, 3 people that we're going to pull through this process. It's like the Lord of the Rings. Like you have 25 months and like a long ass journey to get to the Eye of Sauron or whatever. Yeah. I've never seen them. So
that's pretty good though. You're spot on. Yeah.
To get an offer. And you're spending hours upon hours of effort and prep in these interviews. And I was on Reddit, like scrolling, just looking for additional anecdotes. And there were people that were saying like, I sighed too much. That was the feedback I got. And I didn't get a return, like a second round. And it's like, okay, yes, but let's say you have 5,000 applications. You're whittling it down to 15. Now you have to have 15 30-minute long conversations. And you need to whittle that down to 5. You also, you don't want to have a crazy long interview process on the employer side either.
Yeah.
It's like crazy town. You need to use heuristics.
Ooh.
Your favorite word. To eliminate as many people as possible to find the right person. Mm-hmm. It's really, really hard. And so I honestly have a lot of empathy, and I'm very, very grateful that I'm not in this process right now.
Yeah.
Because you spend hours upon hours and then you get to the last round, you're doing a ton of unpaid labor, right, for this company. You're doing case studies, you're doing, presentations, you're thinking about strategy and ways to get hired. And then they say, no, sorry, we went with someone else. They ghost you, or they decide that they are not hiring at all for this position.
Yeah, that is always tough when they're like, we interviewed a ton of you. Decided we don't even need any of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
ridiculous. So
the overqualified thing also hurts. Yeah. They're like, it's not you, it's us. You're too good for us.
You're too good.
Yeah, this would be too great of an opportunity.
Yeah, and I will say there's been only one instance where I've interviewed someone where I was like, this person is overqualified. They were amazing. And I was like, you have like 25 years of experience. Like, this is a pretty entry-level job.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I just want to try something new. It's like, yeah, but I don't know that we can provide what you were actually looking for.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I get it, I guess. I think right now it's just really hard once you get through there. And I guess what are your ideas or tips for once you're in that part of the process?
Yeah, my overall feel right now is that you just have to be much more intentional about the types of jobs you're applying to, the actual process of applying to them than you have in the past. For some of the reasons we've listed, there's a higher volume of applications. So the ability to stand out has become harder.
Right.
So you need to spend more time figuring out how to stand out. By that, it's basically like you can't spray and pray. You need to get a little more specific, and you really need to understand why you are applying for a certain role and the value you can bring to that certain role. Honestly, I do think the worst thing you can do right now is be like, I'm open to anything.
Yeah.
To me, I understand where that inclination comes from. I'm exacerbated by this process. I'll take any job. It sounds like you don't know what you want, which is what an employer hears, even though really you're like, yeah, I know what I want, but no one's fucking giving it to me. So
right.
I'll take anything.
Yeah.
So I have a few strategies that I've shared with other people that I think have been very helpful. The first is to understand your spiky traits. What I mean by this is, what are the traits that you have that are the furthest from average? They make you weird. They make you unique. Those are your superpowers in the right context. And so the first step of any job application process is understand yourself. What are the traits that make you special? What contexts make you special? Those traits of superpower. And then think about, okay, where do those contexts live? What industries, what jobs, what roles put me in a position where the things that make me me are like superpowers. I'm gonna crush that role. I think people that have a greater sense of who they are, the value they can bring in certain environments, again, they know themselves, they're gonna be able to much more successfully navigate the job market. The second piece of advice I often give for people that are trying to navigate this, the job market, is you can pivot your role or you can pivot your industry, but it's really hard to pivot both at the same time. So the other issue I hear friends doing is like they've worked in marketing in the hospitality industry, and they're like, I hate marketing and I hate the hospitality industry. I want to go work in finance in retail. It's like, well, you don't have any experience in retail or in finance, so that's going to be really, really hard. And so sometimes you have to understand, like, getting to the dream job might take one or two leaps. Like, okay, if you want to get into retail and you work in hospitality and you're in marketing, you're probably going to have to go work in marketing and retail and then find a different role inside that industry. So just thinking about that pivot. And then my third thing, I mentioned this, is you can't spray and pray anymore. Like, maybe that worked again when there was less volume of applications. Right now, two things are going to happen. One, you get a bunch of interviews, but then you can't possibly do them all. They're going to give you case studies. Like, you're ultimately going to have to pick which ones you take seriously. You might as well be in control of that and do that from the earliest possible point. But the second part is just being very intentional. Like, you're going to succeed much more if you apply to 10 jobs that you feel like there's an extreme great fit. You have a why. You really want to work there. You know someone. That's going to increase your chances as opposed to 100 that you're just hoping someone picks up. And then the last thing that I think people do, honestly, a very bad job at, is leveraging their network to help them get a job. And people do want to help you, and your network really wants to help you. But a lot of asks I get from people, there's so much friction involved for me. Like, they make it really hard for me to help them. They're not clear on what they want. They're not clear on how they want to get connected. Yep. Oh, can you chat for 30 minutes to help me think about, like, no one's going to do a very broad ask like that. But if someone was like, hey, I've done a lot of thinking and I really want to work in retail. I see you're connected to someone at Lululemon. I think I'd be a perfect fit for this reason. Would you mind introing him? And I've written what you could intro me with. You just copy and paste it. Of course, I'm going to do that. So reduce the friction that your network has to help you. And you're going to find, like, everyone wants to help, just no one wants to spend a lot of time helping. I think that those four strategies are the best to stand out in this particularly choppy job market.
Yeah, I really like all of those. The one thing that I'll caveat or maybe push back on a little bit is, like, choosing those 10 jobs that you know you would be perfect at. Personally, I have a tendency to, like, create stories and, like, kind of get hyped and, like, get my hopes up. Yeah. And I'm
about, like, any job
about it, or anything, like, I haven't been in the job process in, like, almost 5 years now, but especially at the old, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to work at this great place and it's going to be amazing. And it would be really, really hard to be ghosted or turned down by those jobs. And so I agree that you should be laser focused on the jobs that you know you would be amazing at, that you're really excited about, so you feel like you bring a lot of value to. And I would also remember that it's not necessarily personal, right? Like, you're probably going to experience, especially in this market, a ton of rejection.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's the norm, and it doesn't mean anything about you. And then if, let's say, the first 10 don't work out, just keep going with the next 10.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that this is the wrong path for you. It just means that there's a quadrillion people looking for the same jobs and doing the same thing. Another thing that on the networking side that I really agree with is, reducing friction as much as possible. But if you're entry level and you don't have those, like, weak ties yet, which is, like, something that I think it's Meg J talks about in The Defining Decade, which is mostly about your 20s. If you feel like your network is small, it's mostly college-based, especially if you're trying to break into a new industry or a city that you're not from, is to start with what you know, or who you know. And then at the end of that conversation, the small frictionless piece of advice you're asking for is, can you please direct me to 1 to 2 people that, could help me with blah, blah, blah. And that's a part of your conversation. So let's say you and I had a networking conversation and I asked it a lot about, your position at, as a chief of staff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily interested in chief of staff work, but one of the things that you talked about was strategy. That's fascinating to me. Oh, hey, I really liked our conversation about strategy. Could you direct me to 1 or 2 people in your network that you think I could learn even more from?
Yep.
And then from there, you meet a strategy analyst at Google. And then from there, you meet, from their network, then you meet somebody else. And that's how you kind of grow that network.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you're adding them on LinkedIn, you're sending them a thank you, you're asking a follow-up. And even maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, you send a follow-up. Thank you so much. I just had a conversation with that strategy analyst from Google. Mm-hmm. And oh my gosh, it unlocked so much for me just to remind them, first, that you exist. And second, that they did something nice and it actually panned out, is really helpful, and it encourages a deeper relationship with that person.
Yeah, I think the misconception maybe people have about networking and how it's going to help them get a job is the weak ties are very powerful. We've talked about them a lot on the show, but Kat Cole has this quote that has stuck with me since I heard it 4 or 5 years ago. And she said, it's not just who you know, but it's who knows you and what they know about you. And so I'm thinking of a close friend of mine who is actually switching jobs. The reason she's switching jobs is someone reached out to me and was like, hey, I have this job opening up. I saw your post on LinkedIn about navigating this job market. It was really interesting. Do you have anyone in mind? Mm-hmm. I instantly thought of this person. Mm-hmm. She got the job all herself, but it's because I know her so well, instantly I could vouch for her and I would send her an opportunity that otherwise, you're cold applying to that role. Well, now you're competing against someone who's been warm introed in. Mm-hmm. You're probably going to lose. And so instead of networking and trying to cast as big of a net as possible, it is important to think about, okay, if I can have a really deep relationship with someone that's well connected, it's essentially leapfrogging to those connections myself because they know a lot about me. They can vouch for me. They're going to intro me into their network. And so I think the best piece of advice for a young person, go meet a lot of people, but don't just keep meeting a lot of people for the sake of meeting them. Find the 3 or 4 or 5 people that you feel like, wow, they were really impressive. It sounds like we had a good conversation. It feels like they would want to meet again and go a little deeper because those are the people that are going to find an opportunity, service an opportunity, and then vouch for you to help you get that opportunity. And that quote really shifted my mindset around networking.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of like you have to meet as many people as you can before you decide. So it's like once you have 20 people that you've had coffees with, choose 3 of them to ask for another follow-up or say, hey, I'm going to this event. Are you going to be there? There's some other way to continue to further those relationships. And something else that we've talked about a lot is that it doesn't need to be the CEO of, Apple.
Yeah.
to be valuable.
Tim Cook, I am open to that opportunity.
Sure, messages. But it doesn't, it can be someone that's 1 or 2 levels above you or even 1 level above you because if, let's say you're trying to find a job that's going to be a peer to this person, you can really first have a conversation with them about a role and be like, is this good? Are you at a good company? And also have them vouch for you to their hiring manager, I think is also very useful. So I think sometimes as an entry-level person, if I was trying to get a job right now, I would try and find people that are as close to me as possible.
I think that's great advice. Anything else?
Gosh, I don't know. The only other thing I have to say is the vast majority of job changes I've seen recently, whether they were unemployed and were looking for a new job, trying to do a career pivot, or just had a job and were looking for the next step, the vast majority, I would say 90 to 95%, networked, knew somebody at the place.
Yeah.
Or were vouched for in some way. Mm-hmm. And so I do think that it's really attractive to do the spray and pray, use AI, apply to as many as possible to kind of increase your odds. But ultimately, the way that you're going to get a job is by knowing somebody who can vouch for you.
Yeah, I mean, coming full circle, we just talked about how companies are responding to this job market, and it's you need someone that can immediately add value. We're not going to train them because we can use AI to do the stuff that is simple. So we need someone that is additive, and we need someone that we know we could be vouched for. Mm-hmm. And so the best thing, a warm intro and being very clear about how you can add value immediately. I mean, it's not rocket science, but those are the things that are working in this job market right now.
Yeah, and on the employer side, hiring managers are looking for the best person for the job. They're looking to de-risk that hire. Mm-hmm. Anything you can do to make it as low friction as possible, as easy as possible for them to trust your application, to trust you as a person, you will be the right hire, makes it so much easier. And it's oh, thank God, someone did all the work for me. Mm-hmm. And now it's, it's easy to be this is the right person for this job.
Yep. If you have any strategies that we didn't cover today, shoot us an email per my last email at morningbrew.com. We'd love to hear your strategies, how you're navigating this market, any other stories,
questions,
send them our way. After you send the email, go to Spotify. Give us 5 stars. Helps grow the show. Makes me and Kayla feel good.
Yep.
We like feeling good. We're human like you. So that would be much appreciated. And besides that, thanks for tuning in. Let's roll the credits.
Let's do it.
Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Uchenna Ogun.
And our chief content officer is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Good luck out there, y'all.